mandate and authority as children of God to influence the kingdom of God in our world today.
Good evening, Kingdom Youth. We welcome you back to yet another session of our Kingdom Youth briefing sessions. Tonight, I've got back Ambassador Precious again, and we are just going to be wrapping up this series on how to develop yourself as a leader. And today, we're going to be going more deeper into a topic that we have titled Courage versus Arrogance. So we took this from the briefings from Ambassador Pinky and Ambassador Buang, where they were just highlighting how, as you are in this pursuit to become a leader, that it is very important to be bold. So I just love to welcome Ambassador Precious again.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back. Thank you for having me. Very good evening to you all, and looking forward to having this discussion with you.
Yes. So I actually just want to start off by saying boldness is a very, very important trait to have as a leader. So when we say boldness, we're talking about like having courage, having confidence, being able to stand for something. Because when you are a leader, you are standing for something, you know. Being able as well to go towards your goals as a leader, as you're walking in this vision, but with courage, you know. But the thing is with this boldness topic is that boldness can go one or two ways, you know. They always say take the bull by the horns, be bold, be courageous. And we've also seen even in the past that many leaders who we look up to in the media, it's people who are able to stand for something or to say this needs to come to an end. But now the important thing is to understand, how do you differentiate between courage and arrogance, because it can always go one of two ways. So what's your opening statement on all of this?
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again for having me. I would say that definitely if you are going to pursue anything, courage is definitely one of those things that are required. But you also want to be careful that what you are pursuing is not in arrogance. And the difference that you will see with that is, if we look at courage, it will be the ability to overcome fear to do certain things, right? That the fear, it doesn't mean it's not there, it's there. You understand that the outcome might be otherwise, but you are, how can I put this? You are steadfast on the outcome that has motivated you to start with this thing in the first place. And you are saying that you are going to overcome anything that's going to stand on your way, whatever opposition, whatever fear, and you are going for this thing. It becomes arrogance then when you would do anything to get there.
Yes.
When it's not a problem to step on anyone and anything for you to get there. When you sometimes even perceive yourself in a certain way, or if it becomes now in a demanded way,
Yes.
a forceful way, a my way or no way kind of attitude. So I think the difference there becomes the attitude in which we are pursuing it with. The difference between saying I will step on anyone and anything and saying nothing will stand on my way, those are two different perspectives. Yeah, I think it's the attitude, and from that attitude then the approach is going to reflect as such.
And I think also, just to add on to what you're saying, you know, you're making me think about how there are some other leaders, right? People who have told themselves that they will be willing to go out of their morals and values in order to attain a leadership position, you know? That sometimes someone is so, you know, we hear people talk about the word power hungry. They're so hungry for power that they would even do something against their morals, maybe lying, cheating, stealing, backstabbing, just in order to, you know, achieve a certain goal or to get to where they want to go. But I think the important thing I want to mention around that is, even for the viewers, is that it's very important to remember that as you are a leader, whatever you're doing, you are sowing. So whatever you are sowing, you are definitely going to be reaping the outcome of what you are sowing. So if you are pursuing your leadership through lying or cheating or backstabbing, you are sowing a seed. As much as when you're sowing good things, you are also sowing, and you will see the repercussion of what you are sowing. And the important thing I just want to highlight is that sometimes you will see that repercussion in the people you are leading. You know, so I just wanted to just mention that on what you're saying, that it's very important to just know that you need to go about it with the right attitude, you know. But what would you say, maybe just one point, is that right attitude, something that people can take that's tangible?
Well, remember, these things are coming from the inside out. So that will be determined by some of the things that we have already spoken about. Your motive for wanting to do something or wanting to attain something. From that, then you are mindful of others. You are mindful of the path that you are going to travel. That is, it shouldn't cost someone something in order for you to get there, you know. So yeah, I don't know if that effectively answers your question, or what thoughts you might have around that.
So I think for me, the thoughts I also have around the values is to know how to be firm, to know how to stand for something. Because I've also seen in my experience as a leader, because I think for me, I became like a manager at a young age. I think I was 23 probably. And the people I was managing, most of them, they were older than me, you know. And I had to learn very quickly that when you're in a leadership position, you need to know how to stand for something. And in saying that, what I mean is you need to know how to be bold, in the sense that when you are faced with certain decisions, you need to know how to make the best decision, not the popular decision. Because sometimes the decisions you have to make, not everyone who's following you is going to agree, but because you are now faced in that leadership position, you need to make the decision that is going to be the best. So knowing how to stand even when it's tough, you know. I mean, previously on the Kingdom, you know, youth sessions, we were talking about Youth Month. And for example, if you think about going back to what happened on June 16, that those kids, they were willing to stand for what they were standing for, and irregardless of whether it was an unpopular opinion in the time that we were in our country, you know. So that is a very important thing when we talk about one of the values of courage and boldness, knowing how to stand, and knowing that even when you are getting opposition for what you are standing for, to still stand firm and be steadfast, like you said, in what you are standing for. Because also for you to see a vision come to pass as a leader, you need to understand that there are going to come those moments where you need to stand firm for what you are saying you are believing in, where you are taking the people that are following you, you know?
Yes, you know what, I agree with you 100%. Somebody said leadership can be lonely sometimes, because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you are seeking to please people rather than taking the organization forward, or achieving the goals that you have set out for a particular cause or a particular task. You know, so when you are talking about unpopular decisions and all of that, it will be unpopular now, but once the people see that the outcome, you know, the outcome is then favorable and beneficial to the whole organization or the whole cause, then it becomes a whole different ball game. Yeah, because we want to be careful not to be distracted or double-minded about why we are doing something. You know, we need to know that this is why I said I want to do this, why this thing has to be done, and it has to be done in this way. Unfortunately, leadership actually is not an unfortunate thing. Leadership goes with being firm.
Of course.
It goes with being firm. It goes with being unpopular. And if there is anything that would require change, it will require courage. It will require that some people will not understand at a particular time what you want to do, what you want to achieve. You know why? Because it goes back to vision. What you see is, or sometimes between you and yourself until you stand for it enough for others to be able to see it. And we say this with Walt Disney, that after everything that he envisioned had come to the manifestation or to realization or to reality, then someone felt grieved that he wasn't there to see. But the wife said, he saw this before you saw it.
Yes.
Today we are unveiling this, it's a launch of this, or we are, you know, but it's not something that is new. So we also need to know that if we are going to effect the changes that we need in our world, in our societies, then courage is one of those things. You know, courage is actually the thing that, the boldness is the thing that is required. You know, when you are bold, when you are going after something, boldness means that this, if we are going to require boldness in order for us to achieve something, it means that thing may very well be intimidating. Otherwise,
True.
it wouldn't require boldness. It means there's something intimidating about it. Maybe because nobody has done it before. Maybe because you don't have so many yeses on your side. There isn't so many people who agree with what you want to do because they haven't necessarily captured, or maybe your way of doing it,
Yes.
or maybe your assertiveness in certain things. Because remember, as a leader, that you also need to call things into order, call people into order, you know, and it comes with being able to separate again between
Yes.
staying the course and pleasing people, you know. So I think that goes hand in hand with that. Yeah,
No, that's
it
deep.
definitely is a required trait to have. Yeah.
And I think also, just to add on to, you know, what you're saying, it also just makes me think about how when you are on this leadership journey, you quickly start to realize that not everyone can go on this journey with you. So I think the courage and boldness, it also comes in there, where you need to have courage to know that I cannot take everyone with me on this journey. Not because there's anything at fault with those individuals, but because where you are going, not everyone is going to be able to be sustained where you are going. And sometimes you need to prioritize what is important, you know. So I think also just to know that in you being courageous and being bold, sometimes people who you thought were your friends,
Yeah.
all of a sudden they're no longer your friends, you know. Or they might be coming to you saying, shoo, Precious, but yo, that was harsh, hey. But you need to remember to just know how to block out that noise. You know how people like saying, there's this famous quote these days, block out the noise. To block out the noise and focus on where you're going. Because when you're standing for something, it's not everyone that's going to be standing with you, you know. Even at work, for example, if now you take the decision that I'm going to start working harder, being more focused because I want to go towards a certain management position. Some other friends you had in the office, they might not be your friends anymore because now you don't have time to sit and talk with them or to talk about office politics. Now your time is limited because you're focused towards where you are going,
Yeah,
you know. And
yeah.
sometimes someone who's your mentor might even be reprimanding you, saying you need to spend less time with so and so because I see it's distracting away from, you know. So I think it's just something leaders need to also be aware of, that as you are standing firmly for something, you might lose some, and to be okay with it, to actually make peace with it, to say this is part of the process and it means that I am growing, you know.
That's true. That is so true. As you are talking like that, you're reminding me of a very, very recent thing that happened just after COVID hit in 2020, which now has had a ripple effect
Yes.
up to this point where I am now, with regards to something that happened at work.
Okay.
I got to a point whereby I looked at where I was and I asked myself, I realized that, you know what, God has really brought me far, and I really appreciate how far He has brought me. However, I find that I have the responsibility to partner with Him again, to say from here going forward, what does the next 5 years look like? What role do I need to play? And you know what? The things that came to mind, the things that I began to perceive, the things that he dropped into my spirit. I guess I wasn't in a position to receive that until I started asking those questions, or
Okay.
if it had been coming to me before, I just didn't entertain it until it got to a point whereby I was ready now to look at the next thing that needs to happen. And I am telling you that the things that came to mind that I had to pursue was actually something that I pursued in 2017.
Okay.
And I was rejected then with this thing that I wanted to do, only to find that I was rejected on the basis of age, that I
Okay.
am over age.
All right.
At the time I was 28 and their
Yes.
cutoff age was 26. However, there was a clause in the policy that says that if I hold a diploma in engineering, then I can be considered up until the age of 30, but I didn't know that. So I was well within the time, but lack of knowledge and maybe not having enough courage, one no set me off and I backed down on that thing. 2020, it hits me, it's how many years later?
Sure.
But I did not relent on it. Now, years later, I knew already at that time I was 28 and I didn't qualify. Now I found myself at, how old was I? 32. Now
Okay.
I'm 32, way above age. But I started pursuing it. That required a certain level of courage and boldness, you know, to overcome the no's that I got along the way. What I had in mind was I want to get to the one who has the power to do something about the clause.
Yes.
Because I know what is on the inside of me and I know.
Yes.
And I found
Yeah.
myself knocking on doors. I said, there is nothing that is going to stop me. No from anybody is going to stop me. And I found myself meeting people who now were saying things to me. You know, this one officer said to me, I see that this is difficult. He actually works with the policies and all of that. He
Yes.
works in the training department.
Okay.
And then he said to me, but you know what? You know oxygen? Oxygen, you can close all doors and close all windows and it will still make it in the room. So what he was basically saying is it can be tight and sealed and look like there is no way, but we will find a way. And I think that attitude and that, approach then made things possible in a way that I never thought was possible.
Yes.
The same people who rejected me recently, because there was now feedback that came in writing to say there is no way that this is going to happen. The same people opened doors where I never thought possible. They are the ones who now linked me with the people who can make it possible.
Wow.
Outside the organization where I thought there were limitations.
Yes.
I was pushing for this thing to happen in this organization, but now it began happening somewhere else with the resources being made available. And the thing is going to be realized, but not where and how I thought it was.
Yes,
and if
initially.
I had given up on it, I did in
When
2017.
you got all those no's.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did in 2017. But now in 2020, there was a different thing about it that made me go after it again. And this time I wasn't going to take no for an answer. And they could see it. And that's why they were able to bring their side on this thing. I'm talking about, the same people who said no came back now to be the one who helped. So I think this now takes us to a point where we ask, where does courage come from?
Where does courage
Yes,
come from?
why didn't I have it then? How is it that now I was able to stand and say, this is what needs to happen? I can feel that I can feel it within me. I am not going to have rest if I don't have this. Oh, what made me think about this is when you were saying that there are people who are going to fall off along the way.
Yes.
There are people who supported me at the beginning.
Yeah.
But when the heat came from our seniors to say, how can you support this when you know the policy, they fell off.
Yes.
And they started giving me orders like I shouldn't pursue this anymore.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even go to our head office if I begin to go there without permission or without them making an appointment for me, you know. And you can perceive it as if they turned their backs on me, but they didn't. They could only sustain me up to
a
this
certain point.
Yes, why? Because their authority was limited to a certain level. Beyond that, they cannot do anything. And I looked at them and I said, I thank you. Because if you didn't support it in the first place, it wouldn't have gotten there.
Yes.
And you have done your part in the game.
Yes.
Or not the game, in the whole scenario.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
But I am not going to stop
Yeah.
because of this now. And pushing through, saw the thing happening. And I can only thank God. And to answer the question now, to say where
the courage comes from. Yes.
You know what? I found that for me in this situation, it came from knowing who I am. That is the basis of everything. If you know who you are and you know why you are going after a specific thing, then no door will ever... You know, I found myself saying that doors will have to be made on walls. If if there is something has to happen, if there is no door, I have to climb in, but there has to be a way.
A way for you to enter.
Yes. And you see that persistence was not climbing on anyone or manipulating anything. It was to say, I want what I want.
And I'm going
if
for
I have
it.
perceived it, if I have seen that it can be possible, it has to be possible. And guess what? The same people who said no were able to see the thing radiating from within.
Because of that persistence.
Yes, to say that, you know, we cannot deny a desire that comes from within in this way. And that's how now the tables were able to turn. So this is to say that even when it looks like it's not going to happen, we have dealt with the arrogance now.
Of course.
We are talking about effecting the changes that needs to be effected. Even if it looks like it's not going to happen, the more you show that this is something that you want, there is going to be a way, you know. And I'm talking about all things working together to make that thing possible. And yeah, in this case, I would say God turned the hearts around, because I guess it also, the faith factor also came in.
The favor.
The faith factor came in, and then favor was made available. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on how can we develop courage? How does courage come about? You know, if we are talking about courage and having courage, how does one build up courage, the boldness, the right kind of courage, you know, that boldness that you know, affects the positive changes in our world?
Okay, so I think, wow, that was actually a very encouraging, motivational story. I'm even encouraged by it. I think I would say one of the ways to develop courage, it's being faced with adversity, because I personally believe that something cannot be developed unless it is tested, unless there is something coming against it. You know? You need to be faced with a challenge in order for there to be a need for something to be pulled out from within you. I'll just use myself again as an example. I didn't even think I would share this, but you've encouraged me with what you've said. So like how I said that I became a manager at a young age, and I had a lot to learn in that process. And then I remember there was a time where a lot was happening. I had so much adversity, and there was a situation that happened which was out of my control, and I ended up being affected. And then I actually got demoted, you know, from that position to a lower position due to what had happened. And it was the first time in my life I ever experienced anything like that. And I was confused because I'm like, God, what's happening? Is this really happening to me? It's not even my fault, you know. But I was like, you know what? It's fine. This is God's will. And I think in me being put in that situation that I was in, and now, of course, everyone was looking at me, everyone was talking about me, but that is where my courage was birthed, where I had to be bold, where I had to have courage, because at that point, I had to make the decision to say, am I now going to give up and say I'm giving up on this leadership goal because I got demoted? Or am I actually going to take this as a challenge and be courageous and face whatever it is that I have to face, you know? So I'm just saying that to just encourage people to say that even when you are in that leadership position, sometimes your courage and boldness is birthed through the challenges that come your way. And now, looking back in hindsight, I'm thankful to God that I went through that, because it made me stronger.
Absolutely.
It made me way stronger. I think it actually made me become a better leader than I was before. And through God's grace, in a short space of time, that situation, He worked it out on my behalf, and I got promoted even more than where I was before. But why? Because they also saw the courage in me, that I didn't stop, I persevered. So it's just to encourage, the young people, to say that even when you're facing situations, that are challenging you, and that are making you question, should you carry on in this pursuit? Carry on with boldness and carry on with courage. Because why? It was my perseverance in that situation. It was me being courageous. And trust me, there's a lot of people who said, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just look for another job? Why don't you just, because look what has happened. And I was like, no, I know where I'm going, and I know what my goal is. And I persisted in that.
Wow.
And that persistence and that perseverance and courage is, once this whole situation was handled, what made them to call me and say, we've made this decision.
Wow.
So it's just to go back to your question about where do you get courage from, where do you get boldness from,
Yeah.
because it's those situations that will make you take the bull by the horns and say, I'm not turning back, I'm not giving up, I'm not gonna allow, like what you said, those no's to discourage me. I just know that every no is leading me closer to a yes.
Yeah.
And I think also, just to bring it back a little, to also remember, I once heard this very powerful speaker say that, I just can't remember his name now, but he said that what God does is that He shows you the vision of where He's taking you, but He will not show you the process. Because if He had to show you the process, you would probably turn around and say, I'm not going for that vision. No, I think I'm fine. I'm comfortable where I am. But also, that's where now faith has to also come in, to understand that I'm not in this by myself. I have someone who is representing me. I have someone who has shown me that goal, where He's taking me to. So therefore, He's going to make sure I get there, So I think that's also, like what you said, faith goes along with courage and boldness. Because you are not having courage in how do I say this?
Your own ability.
In your own abilities. But you are having courage in who you have been called to be. As you said, dominate in your purpose. Because you know that I'm dominating in my purpose. I'm dominating in where this vision that I've been shown of where I'm going. I'm going to be courageous and bold towards this where I'm going, Yeah.
Wow, I see that in you.
Yes.
I see you standing up and fighting and saying, no, it's not going to happen in that way. I know what I want. I know why I'm here. And I think that's part of a leadership journey. Things are going to trip us along the way.
Yes.
We're going to fall along the way.
Yes.
But we need to have the courage to stand up. So it's not only standing firm for something, but it's also having the courage to stand up after we have fallen, to say, that was not a detriment.
No,
it was a lesson.
It's
made
part
you
of the
better.
journey.
I like when you say it made you a better leader.
Yes, it
because
did.
now you are armed with lessons.
Yes.
Now you know what didn't work and how to make it better. And as we are on this thought, what else comes to mind is that sometimes that boldness and that courage is in there. It's innate.
Yes.
In some cases, it needs to be pulled out.
Yes.
In some cases, it's there.
Yeah.
But you'll find that it's channeled in the wrong direction. Let's
Yeah.
talk about when it is there, but it is used in an arrogant way or in a way that is not affecting a positive, change. I will make an example with, we have leaders in our times that we can refer to, but I am shying away from mentioning names.
Yes, of course.
It's very safe for me to mention this one name. This person, Paul, when he was still Saul, and when he was Paul, he was the same person. The difference was the motive. So I find that the difference between courage and arrogance would be now the motive or what fuels the other. It might be that it might actually be the same thing, but the difference is what fuels the other. Because when the motive was negative for Paul, he produced negatively.
Yes, of course.
And he produced it with zeal and with courage and with passion and with all of those things. But because the vision was not serving positively, then the outcome was in that way.
Yes.
But when now the vision was positive and the motive was positive, we see that we can see the different results between Saul and Paul, and we wouldn't be here today if in the way that we are. We wouldn't have been exposed to what we have been exposed to in terms of the letters if that Saul was not able to transform to Paul. So there is hope for one who find themselves having the desire, they have the drive, they can pursue, because that's a good thing.
Yes.
If we look at maybe the people that we mentioned, whereby you find yourself stepping on other people to achieve what you want, it means you have the ability to pursue.
Yes, of
It means
course.
you have the courage, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
We just need to look at the motive, why you are doing this thing, what fuels you. Then in that way, that courage can be channeled to produce positively. Yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts around that or anything that comes to mind.
Yes.
While we are on this.
Okay. So I think just for us to wrap up, we can just cover a couple of points. So I think what you're saying, it's very true, in terms of having courage, but channeling it in the right direction and understanding that it is innate, it is within us. It just takes a certain situation to bring it out of us, and to understand that we need to channel it positively, because it can very easily go in the other direction. And I think what you said, just to always bring yourself back to ask, what is fueling you? What is it that's pushing you towards this thing that you're being so courageous, this pursuit, where is it coming from? What is the root of it all, Yeah. And then what are your closing comments before we finish off?
It would be that it's actually the things that go in my mind all the time, that there is nothing that is impossible. There is nothing that is not achievable. There is nothing that is too big. And whatever it is, now I'm speaking directly to the young people, that whatever it is that you find it in your heart that you want to pursue, that is a burden in your heart, the change that you would like to see, you can be able to do that. You can be in a position where you effect the change that you want, so long as your motive is correct, you have positive motive. So long as the outcome is positive, the legacy that is going to leave is one that is going to be beneficial to the greater spectrum of things. There is something that is within you that only you can do. And of course, it will require courage to do that. So it's very important that you connect yourself with your maker, that so that you can be able to know who you are, know why you are here. And, once you get into partnership with him, then you are able to know which path you can be able to go. And trust me on this, the support and the resources will come. I think somebody put it in this way, that when there is a vision, then provision follows, So once you start taking those steps, those bold steps towards achieving that vision that is going to be beneficial to others, not only to yourself. I think that's another thing, because sometimes we pursue things for self.
For self-gain.
Yes, I think that's another thing now, because when I was pursuing it now, the second time, I had an even greater vision that was way beyond me. Whereas before, it was just me only. And
I think I can also relate with that in my case, because I'm a very ambitious person. I always want to be at the top, So I think the first time when I became a manager, when I was young, it was more about me gaining that management. I'm still young, I'm still young, guys. Disclaimer. it was more about me wanting to be in that position, wanting to be successful, because that's my nature. But I think when the whole situation happened and I took a step back, now it wasn't about just me anymore. And I saw how even in that position, I affected so many people's lives in a positive manner.
Yeah.
You know, it sort of changed my perspective about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And now my goal was not just about me thriving in my career, but it was also about me effecting change in other people's lives. It gave me a totally different perspective, and that way I was also now able to support others towards becoming leaders as well, becoming managers as well. It was a totally different experience compared to the first time around. Yes.
There's something that you said in preparation to this before we went on camera, that we don't regret what
No.
we have been through, because that pain then turns into purpose, so that we can be in this position to share our experiences.
Yes.
And what it took us 10 years to learn, it can take the next person a year to learn, because we have traveled that on their behalf in a way, especially when we share that, to say this and this and this you can skip, because it's a time waster.
Yes.
And you can implement it in this way. So yeah, it's really a blessing to be here. I think they are even more blessed to be in a position where they
Yes.
can find platforms like this, where we can share our experiences and all that. Yeah.
Yes, okay. All right. I just want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in with us tonight. Thank you again to Ambassador Precious. Having you is always such an amazing blessing. I believe that we've all learned so much about courage, boldness, and just going after your goal, being in pursuit of your leadership goal, but how to channel that in a positive manner. So I just hope that this series has really allowed you to be able to confront certain issues, challenges, and just be equipped with tools that are going to help you, like Ambassador Precious say, things which maybe could have taken us 10 years or 5 years to achieve, that you will achieve it in a year or even in 6 months, because now you have the tools. Thank you again, and have a good evening, and see you at our next Kingdom Youth briefing session.